That's it. How would you do, how would you shift this? We're gonna add 1 to what? The y values. What it does is it shifts, this is gonna shift up 1. So this is the new graph of it. This is the parent, and this is the new one. Questions? Yeah.
If we have a problem like this, and it shifts like that, can it not be 1 next time? Because it's hard
Yes.
to write the parent and the
Mhm.
clear circles and stuff.
Mhm. Yep. That one, did you have a question? Okay. All right, what does a number inside of a grouping symbol do? This is the absolute value of x minus 2. So this is your parent, what does this do?
Horizontal shift
It's a horizontal shift 2 units to the right. So in other words, you're gonna add 2, the opposite of this number is 2, you're gonna add 2 to the x values. You remember this stuff? It's been a while, but this is gonna reflect it over the y-axis, which ends up being the same graph. What do you do when you have a negative inside of the grouping symbol? You multiply the x values by -1. Value. And then this one is a shift 4 units. It's the opposite of +4, so you're gonna subtract 4 from your x values. I'm sorry, subtract 4 from your x values, I said that right. Now, what do you want, when you do your parent function, the square root of x, what numbers can you take the square root of? 0, 1, 4. So those would be your parent function. When you did your t-chart for this one, you have the square root of x. That's your parent function. So you want to put numbers that you can take the square root of. Square root of 0 is 0, square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2. So 0, 1, 1, and 4, 2. And now, what are you going to do with this? This means you're going to take your x values and subtract 4. So take this and subtract 4. What is 0 minus 4?
-4.
-4. What's 1 minus 4? 3. So you're going to go over 3. You keep the y values the same. Okay? Next set of problems. You're going to have one of these on your test for sure. Okay, this one, you are going to shift your graph 3 units to the left. So instead of it being a -3, this is where when you shift it left or right, it's always the opposite. You guys went to the Oakland thing, and we did give you one, I recall.
No, that's the packet I did actually.
To reflect something across the y-axis, you want the negative inside, right here in front. To stretch something vertically by a factor of 1.5, when you vertically stretch something, that's the number outside, and it must be bigger than 1. Questions? Now, if you want to, you may distribute this negative. So you could leave your answer like that, we'll take it, or you could write it as 1.5 negative x minus 3. This does not mean a shift 3 units to the right. It's 3 units to the left because you would have had to pull that negative out. Does everyone understand this?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay. That's the A value. The A value must be pulled out. It looks like this, you guys. F of x equals C. This is your vertical stretch or compression. The fancy F that I make, then you have a parenthesis, A. This is your horizontal stretch or compression. Then you have your letter x, 1x, positive 1x, minus B, and then plus D. So, what does this mean? This number inside, that's the first thing you do to a problem. You wanna make sure the A value, the coefficient of X, is pulled out.
Horizontal compression.
This is either, if there's a negative here, it's a reflection over the y-axis. If you see a negative. But if negative, it's a reflection over the y-axis. You always take the A value and flip it. So it's 1 over A. If that number is less than 1, it's a horizontal compression. If it's less than 1.
Stretch, isn't it? Horizontal stretch.
If you flip it,
Oh,
it's a
that's
horizontal compression. If, when you flip it, 1 over A, if it's greater, if that number is greater than 1, then it's a horizontal stretch by that number.
So basically, it's a fraction.
I don't wanna say that, because I can make a fraction,
Yeah, but because most fractions.
you wanna know, if it's less than 1, when you flip it, it's gonna be greater than 1. Then it's gonna be a horizontal stretch. Don't use the word fraction, because I can make a fraction less than 1, and I can make a fraction greater than 1. So be careful with that word fraction. Everybody understand that? You wanna look at if it's bigger than 1 or less than 1. So, always flip this number first. If it's greater than 1, it's a horizontal stretch. If it's less than 1, it's a horizontal compression. Now, if you were beginning to graph a function, what do you do with this A value? You take this number, whatever it is, you flip it. That number gets multiplied by all the X values. You don't, like if this were 1/2 here, you don't multiply the X's by 1/2, you multiply them by 2. Got that? Okay. What does this B do? The B shifts it left or right. Now, why does it say negative B? Because it's the opposite of what B is. So you're gonna add or subtract that number, the opposite of it, to your X value. So first you do this, then you add or subtract that number, the opposite of it, to your X values. This number right here in front, this C value, C is, if it's greater than 1, it's a vertical stretch by whatever that number is. If C is less than 1, it's a vertical compression by that number. Now, what do you do with this number in front? You multiply whatever it is, you don't flip this one. You will multiply this number by all the Y values. Okay? Whatever that number is, you will, if it's 2, if it's negative 2. Also, I have to mention, what if there's a negative in front? A negative C, it's a reflection over the X axis. So let's say there were a negative 3 out here. You would take your, after you did these two things first, you're gonna multiply every Y value in your chart by negative 3. If it's a third, you multiply everything in your Y chart by 1/3. This last thing right here, add D, you're gonna shift up or down vertically. Whatever that is, you go up or down. You're gonna add this number to all your Y values. So inside, you affect your X value. Outside, you do that to your Y values. Okay? Uh-huh. Yep, you sure can. Okay, here are these answers, and again, people, if you're not getting them, these are the odds, they're in the back of your book. Okay, Now, look at 28. They're giving you the function f of x is square root of x. On your test, you're going to be asked this question. You're given g of x. I'm not going to give you f of x. The first thing you need to do is state the parent function. What's the parent function?
Square root of x.
Now, if you just write the square root of x, you're going to lose a half point. You have to have x and y. It's nothing if you just have square root of x. You have to have 2.
Does it matter if you have f or x or y? Or
Well,
do you prefer f?
technically, no, but you want to name it a different function. Because you're shifting it from this to that, so that's why we use, and it's a function, so we, whenever possible, use the fancy f. Okay? So, I would accept it, but this is the better answer.
Okay.
You want to say this is your parent function called f, and we want to shift it. This is a different equation. That's why we use a different letter. That's how it goes. What should you do before you start talking about transformations? What should you do?
Take out a half of everything. Negative half of the grouping.
What letter of the alphabet did we call this?
A.
That's your A value. How do you pull this out of this?
X minus 6.
Very good. What are you doing to these two numbers? You're dividing them, in case you didn't catch that. You take this and you're pulling a half out of it, you get 6. Now, why did it become a negative 6? Because we pulled out a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. Now we're ready to go. This is your A value, that's where you start. So what are you gonna, we're gonna list all the transformations in the correct order. First, what are you gonna say?
Reflection over y.
And ladies and gentlemen, what letter is that?
No letter.
That's nothing, I don't know, I don't read that letter. Everybody look at what I just wrote. I don't know if that's an X or a Y, and every year, I have to flip a coin. I'm not flipping coins, I'm not guessing. To me, that means you don't know if it's X or Y, so you do a half X, half Y, and then I have to, I'm not gonna assume that you know what it is. This means you're not sure, or you're very sloppy. This is how we make Ys, and this is how we make X's. Okay? This is nothing.
Oh, that's nice.
So, this means reflection over the y-axis. What's the next thing you're gonna write?
Horizontal stretch by 2.
Horizontal stretch by 2.
Can we rewrite the problem as -2, or do you want us to keep it as the fraction?
What do you mean rewrite the
Like, do
problem?
you want us to rewrite it as negative square root of -2 times x minus 6?
Why, no, this is the problem. You don't put a -2 here.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted
What
us to
you're
put it-
talking about, you need this number here, this 2, in this negative, I think what you're saying, the -2 is the number you would multiply by the x values in
Yeah.
your,
That's what I'm
no,
saying.
you don't write that. That equation is that equation. This -2 just tells you what to multiply the x values by. Did everybody understand that, his comment? I'm glad you asked that. Now what would you do? You're gonna shift,
6 units right.
it's a horizontal shift 6 right. I will accept 6 right. You need to know that when you're going left and right, you're moving horizontally, okay? If you just wanna say 6 right, I'm cool with that. Then you go to this out here. And what does this do?
Reflection over x-axis.
Reflection over the x-axis.
So can you just put
Done.
IOX or doing special y-axis?
I'll take that. Can I make sure it's an x?
I curve my axis.
You wanna curve it like that? That's fine.
That's what I do.
Questions? You guys, we did a whole page of these. Do you remember that? So 29 you'll find in the back of your book. 30 and 32 are not in the back of your book, so you might want, unless these were different numbers. Were these different numbers? These were okay. So, this one is a horizontal stretch by 3. You remember you flipped that? This is a vertical stretch by 2 and shift 5 units up. This one, a lot of people had trouble with. You're gonna wanna rewrite this as negative 2x plus 4 and then factor the negative 2 out. Everybody see what we did here? Now, this is your A value. This is your B value. This is your C value. And there is no D value.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you have V shift when it's a horizontal shift? 2 units right.
Yeah.
Isn't it
Oh,
horizontal?
yep, this is an error. Horizontal shift, 2 units right. Okay, so what would we do first? This is a reflection over the y-axis. This is a horizontal compression by 1/2. Remember you flipped that? Yes, this is 2 units right, horizontally 2 units right. You're vertically stretching this by 3, and you're not going up or down. Okay. 34, 37, 39, and 40. I'm gonna show you a problem with the T-chart, make this easier for you, but those should be easy. So let's talk about these back ones. Yes.
When you're talking about the transformations and all that, if you have a reflection over the y-axis underneath the square root, is it not a function? So you don't use it?
No, you have, that doesn't, no, because you could multiply by a negative. X can be a negative, and what's a negative 10 to negative? It's a positive. Also, if you add a large enough number, okay, if you add a large enough number, you're gonna make it positive. For example, a lot of people get confused by that. If I give you this, a lot of people think, oh, you can't do that. It's a reflection over the y. This is what you're asking me, right here. How do you do the domain on this? So in other words, you can do this. What numbers can you put in here? Here's your domain. What you do is you take this and you make this greater than or equal to 0. Now I'm going to subtract 3. Are you with me? Divide by negative 1 and flip the sign. So in other words, the numbers that you have to put in here are 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2. This is telling you that these numbers that you put in will give you a positive number under the radical. So in other words, from 3 to negative infinity, this is your domain. Does this make sense? Everyone got that? A lot of people think that because this is a negative, that means that you can't do it. It's no solution. But yeah, these numbers work. Let's test it. If I put a negative 1 here, what's negative 1? Positive 1. What's positive 1 plus 3? It's 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. Okay. Next. Now, what's this nonsense? A lot of you guys were a little confused on it. Is this a function, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes. So we call this f of x. Well, what does it mean when we have a number, so f of x is this picture. If we have a -1 after here, what does that tell you to do?
Goes down one and the y.
You are shifting, so you might want to make a T-chart. You may want to write these points going from left to right. So what would this ordered pair be? -1, -2. I think this is -4, 0, because it's so light. This would be -3, -1. I would go to this next one, this is 0, 2. And I would go right to this one, this is 3, 2. That's good enough. So, when you put any kind of a number in front, after, I'm gonna test you, watch this, how smart you guys are. So, if I gave you, I want you to graph this. What would you do to this problem?
Multiply the y values by 3.
You got it. This means you multiply the y values by 3. What if it was a -3? You multiply the y values by -3. What y values am I talking about? These ones. And you leave the x the same. What if you saw this problem? Now what are you gonna do? Multiply x by 1/3. Remember that? What if it's a -3 by -1/3? What if I gave you this problem? What would you do? Multiply the x values by what? A half.
And then shift them up 4.
And what would you do to the y values? You're gonna add 4 to them. Does this come back to you now? Okay, so, that's what you do. That's what you were supposed to do on these. And then here's a nut, this is just a different picture. So let's run through these. What would you do with this function?
Multiply y values by -4.
Yep. What would you do with this one?
Multiply y values by negative.
Well, multiply y values by -1. What would you do with this one?
Multiply x values by negative.
There you go. And what would you do with this one?
Multiply x values by negative.
Multiply the x values by -1/2. Multiply by -1/2. By -1. Last page. Same thing, more of. You have this picture now. What would you do? I would start with, make a T-chart, and I would start with this ordered pair. Name it. Name this one, name that one, name this one, name that one, name that one. So you imagine you have your T-chart. What does this notation mean? Means add 2 to all your x values and graph it. So what's it doing? It's shifting your graph 2 units right. What does this do?
Shift your graph 2 units right and move it up 3 units.
So this means add 2 to the x values, and what does this 3 do? You add 3 to the y values. What does this do?
Left 1.
Subtract
and
1
3.
and subtract 3. I'm writing this fast. You guys with me? I would rewrite this one as -f of x and then +2.
Multiply y values by negative and then
Mhm.
add 2.
And then add 2 to the y values. What would this mean?
Multiply x values by negative and then add 2 to the y's.
Yep, and this last one, subtract 3 from the x values. Okay, moving along. Do you have worksheet that I made?
Yep.
Okay, one of these will be on your test, and we went over it already. Are we cool with this?
Yes.
We did a lot of them. You will have one of these on your test. Everyone knows how to do that, right? We went over
Good
it.
with it.
Now, you will have one of these on your test. Do you wanna do it?
I can do
Is
that.
everybody okay with it?
Good.
It's, I don't know what you mean by that.
What
If
he's
you go out-
asking is you have to fill out the entire chart. Or can you
Yes,
do like-
you're going to wanna fill out this entire chart. What I would do is I would start with your parent function. And we talked about what the parent function looks like. These are your parent functions. You guys should be really good at this now. You should know the shape of it. Why should you know the shape of it? Because when you plot these, when you actually get to the very end, you need to know what you're doing, what it's gonna look like. So plot your points. Now, what should be the next thing you do to this problem?
Take out -2.
Take out a -2.
Multiply x values by
Okay,
-1/2.
now, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I think you should do. What's the first thing you're gonna do? That's your A value. You're gonna take all these x values and do what to them? Multiply them by what? Let's see how many people we're gonna get.
By negative.
You're gonna multiply your x values by x. You flip this one. So what's -1/2 of that?
4.
4. What's -1/2 times this?
Half.
0. What's -1/2?
-4.
What do you do to the y values? You leave them alone. What's the next thing you're gonna do with this?
Subtract 2 from x value.
You're gonna take all your x values and you're gonna subtract 2. That's B. So take your teacher. What is 4 minus 2?
2.
What's a half minus 2?
-1.5.
What's 0 minus 2?
-2.
What's -1/2 minus 2?
-2.5.
What's -4 minus 2? Right? -4, we're gonna minus 2, we get -6. What do you do to your y values? You leave them alone.
Perfect.
Now, if there were a number out here, what would we do with that number if you go here to
You
this?
multiply the y values.
You take all your y values, if there was a number out here, you would take all the y values here and multiply it by that number. But you don't have to do that. What's the last thing you're gonna do?
Add 2 to the y values.
These y values.
Yes.
So let's add 2 to them. You get 0, 1,
2,
2,
3, 4.
keeping these x's the same. What are you gonna graph now?
All that.
These are what you're gonna graph. So, let's do that. Your vertex, or your center, no, it's not the vertex, but it's 0, 0. But what would it be now? It's -2, and then 2. Okay, then, I don't know, it doesn't matter how you do it. You're gonna go, if you go over 2, up 0, negative 1.5, 1.5, 1. You get there, negative 2, 2. Negative 2.5, 1, 2, 2.5, and 1, 2, 3. And then negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's your graph.
You still go from the origin, that's what it don't start from the new origin, and then you center point.
That's your graph.
Right. You still graph from the origin, and then you center point.
Sure.
Because I know you started with 2.5.
This is your new center right here.
But you still graph from the origin, the baseline, you don't graph from the origin.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like,
The origin is not part of the graph now, you know that, right?
yeah, but when you're graphing your other points, when you do still start.
Are you saying that this is 2, 0, you go over 2, whoops, 2 and up 0, that's that point.
So you still graph from the origin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean you think this is the origin right here?
No, I was making sure you didn't, because I know I did try that once last year.
Okay, 3, 5. 3, 5. What are your questions on 3, 5? The answers to 3, 5, most of them are on the board, or in the back of your book. This is what you're gonna be given. Okay, everybody focus up here, please. Does everybody understand the difference between this, 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 this? Look at all these things we've done. This,
That's this way.
this.
Yes.
Yep, we all know that stuff.
Okay, what would you do? For this one, they're asking you to do what to these two? Add them. I want your answers in standard form and simplify. Standard form, you guys know what standard form is, right?
Yes,
Okay. What's this one gonna make you do?
subtract.
Take this one and distribute a negative, and then you can add them, okay? You guys know this, right?
I have a question.
This, F minus G, so it'd be X minus 4 minus, so your answer would be negative X squared. Then what? Plus X,
Minus 20.
y 12.
You have to distribute.
This is gonna be a positive 16, 16 minus 4 is 12, yes.
Okay, when there's a fraction in one of these two upper functions, and you do one of these things, how do you write that answer in standard form? Like, where does the fraction?
Don't worry about that.
Okay,
Standard, when we say standard form, it's gonna be for, you're not gonna have an X in the denominator,
okay.
okay? Don't worry about that. Does everybody know what this notation means versus these two? What are these two? What does that mean?
You put the one in
You plug it in for X.
Okay, so for this one, it means take this and plug it in here and make sure you simplify. If I said, what's F, what's this one gonna be?
You plug F into F.
And so you plug F into F, so you might wanna write another F, just copy it.
Just we should.
And if you plug this in here, you'd have X minus 4 minus 4.
Or X.
Okay, and then simplify it. What does this one make you do? divide, and don't forget to simplify. We talked about this about 3 or 4 days ago.
Can you do that when the x minus 4 minus 4? Because I always just want to multiply that negative to the
X minus 4 minus 4. X minus 4, and then minus 4 is
There's no
X.
parentheses then. Parentheses in there. You just leave it.
You take this, if you plug this right here, so this is this. You have X minus 4, that's your X value, minus 4.
Yeah, because whenever I see the negative on the outside, it goes.
Well, yeah, there's nothing you can, I mean, that's just X minus 8.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, what about if I gave you this problem? F of G of 3. What would you do here?
Plug 3 in for x for g, and then take the answer, or the output or whatever, and then plug in for x of that.
What if I put this here?
Then you take what you got for f times by 2.
You see, now that's
Yeah,
their.
I got that. I can do that. I can do that.
What? I mean, that's not the topic.
Oh, all right, you got some copies. Yeah, I'm already getting happy. Something's
Yeah.
possible.
But if you're looking for an example of what you do there.
How do you do
it'd probably
this?
be 17, 18.
Can you guys be quiet, please? How would you do this problem?
Plug 3 into G.
3 goes into G. If you put a 3 here, what's 3 squared? 9. What's 9 minus 16? Negative 7. So this is negative 7. This is what you have. Then what? Tell me what?
Plug negative 7 in for x of the f.
What's negative 7 minus 4?
11.
Then what?
Then you minus
Plug 3 right here. What's 3 minus 4?
negative 1,
What's negative 1? So you have 4. Negative 1.
negative 4.
What's this? Then what? Easy? It's really not that bad. Okay, the only other thing you guys may have struggled with also, which is on your test, if I gave you this problem, if I asked you to split, please, if I asked you to split this function up into 2 different functions, so we don't use up, give me 2 different letters.
gx and hs. X.
Okay, what would the big one be? What would the small one be?
X squared minus
What's underneath? Now, so f of x is the composition of g of h of x. Because if you take this and you plugged it in here, would you get that?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone's got that down?
Yep.
All right. Next, go to, oh, we have to do the symmetry stuff. 3, 4a. Three, 4a.
But it doesn't
Okay, the next one. 3, 4a, symmetry. You will be asked, I want you to go to number 8. Read this question. Determine algebraically. Algebraically, how do you determine if something, and I don't even know if this is a function because it says y, there's no f of x. So how do I know this has symmetry to the y-axis? Algebraically, what you do is you replace x for negative x. If you can get the problem back to its original, you say no. Or if you can get it back to its original, you say yes. This one was no. This one did not work. Okay? How do you know if something has algebraically, if it has symmetry to the x-axis? You replace y for negative y. If you can get it back to its original, then yes. Simplify it. In the origin, what do?
Replace both.
You replace x and y, you put the opposites. And again, if you can get it back to its original problem, then you say yes, but this one did not work. You're 18. Okay, now, what if I change this direction and I said determine algebraically if this is an even function? It's the same question. Even means y-axis, odd means origin. Is there another name for the x-axis symmetry? No. Why? Because it's not a function. So we say that this is an even function. An even function means it has symmetry to the y-axis. Odd function means it has symmetry to the origin. You gotta know that. And then flip to the back. So for a picture, everyone should be able to look at it and see if it has symmetry or not with respect to the x-axis, the y-axis, and the origin. How do you do even and odd? Even and odd, what do you do for even? Even, you replace what? X, negative x. Simplify, if you get the same, it's even. And for odd, what do?
Replace both.
Replace not only x for negative x,
But y.
y has to you put a negative y, and if you get the original, yes, it's an odd function. Can everybody take something and make it an even function? Even means it has symmetry to the y-axis. So what you would do is take these ordered pairs and change the x value to be opposite. Odd, you take both x and y and change both of their signs and graph it. Section 3.6 is inverse. You guys flip to the back of the book and check your answers. Inverse, you flip x and y.